Welcome back to A Better Choice Homestead. My name is Kelly, and on my channel, I focus on food, growing it, preparing it, and preserving it. For today, I am going to be doing kind of a hodgepodge of things. I've got collards sitting upside down in a saltwater bath right now. Next to that, I've got some kale that I've got to do the same thing to as we're de-stemming and getting these blanched. I've got some bok choy here. I've got my cayenne peppers that I grew and dehydrated last year. I need to get those ground down in the Vitamix because my cayenne pepper jar is just about empty. I've got some eggshells that I've saved over the last couple of months because I grind those down into powder for use in the next season's garden to add some calcium nutrients. I've also got some of my extra spicy peppers here. I'm going to be using a couple different spices over here with those peppers and making a homemade hot chili oil. I am so excited about that for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I've mentioned in other videos that my favorite winter lunch is a homemade bowl of ramen soup. And I usually put a lot of my freeze-dried vegetables into them, so it's so quick. The noodles, if you buy fresh, they're done in like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. If you buy them dry, they're done in about 4 or 5 minutes, and then all you have to do is pour hot water on. And especially with the freeze-dried food, that's what the bok choy is going to be for. I use eggplant, I use carrots, I use scallions, onions, just throw a whole bunch of freeze-dried vegetables in there with your noodles, even some freeze-dried meats, and then you just pour the hot water over it and you've got amazing lunch right there. I usually buy the chili crisp or the hot chili oil, and then I just add that as the flavoring, but I'm gonna try to make my own. Not only am I gonna try to make it for the ramen bowl, but also because I'm still trying to perfect my hack for the hot tom dipping sauce, which is a tomato and oil mix that is absolutely delicious and is really well served with a Italian stretchy bread, which I recently showed on my channel as well. So I'm super excited about getting that hot oil made as well. Got a lot of things to do, so let's get going. All right, I've just taken the collards out of the salty water bath and put the kale in. So we're gonna get started with these. I'm going to just cut the main stem because it's a pretty thick fibrous stem off of each of these, and then I will get the leaves cut down to kind of bite-sized pieces. They don't have to be exact. They can be torn, they can be cut, however you want to do it. And I absolutely love having greens available either blanched and frozen or freeze dried. Both work really well. I tend to run low on freezer space, so my preference is usually freeze dried. I'll probably do both here. And I do this with kale, with Swiss chard, with collard greens, with the leaves off of my broccoli plants, as well as the leaves off of my Brussels sprout plants. And I love all of them. They are all absolutely delicious. What I use these for, of course, the ramen bowls. This is also a really easy and quick meal, like breakfast or even lunch, where you would just take these either from the freezer or out of whatever container you have them in, and then just rehydrate them or thaw them from the freezer, put them into a skillet, and you can just fry those up in a skillet with a tiny little bit of oil, some eggs, some hot cherry peppers or some banana peppers, whatever kind of peppers you like, or dial back the heat and use bell peppers, some onions, a little bit of garlic. It is so delicious. It's kind of a play on a dish that you can get here locally called Utica greens. Actually, I think I'll make some Utica greens on one of my Tuesday segments because it is a regional dish, but it is phenomenal. That's typically made with escarole. I'm not a big fan of escarole, though. I do like the heartier leaves of the collards and the kales over escarole, which I think is a little bit bitter. But traditionally, it's made with escarole. So I am just going to get these chopped down. I've got a pan here heating up. So once this comes to a boil, I will keep putting these leaves in for 2 to 3 minutes, and then I will scoop those out. I've got a bowl of cold water sitting on the other side of the stove that I'll add some ice to. We'll do a cold water plunge and get them cooled off to stop the cooking process, and then we're gonna move on to the kale. That was easy enough. Now I have 2 stacks of leaves. The stems you can absolutely throw into your freezer and you can keep those, dice them up and use them in stir fries, use them just like this in a pot of homemade vegetable stock. If you'd like to keep those, absolutely keep those. I'm not going to be keeping these. They're going to go into my compost. And if I didn't mention, the reason that everything is sitting in a saltwater bath is to get rid of any passengers that might have come in through the garden. This was grown organically, no sprays, no pesticides whatsoever. I didn't see any pests in the water. I'm not seeing any pests on the leaves, but I am seeing some leaves do have some holes in them, and I'm just cutting, if they've got the larger holes on them, I'm just cutting that out. It's been pretty well munched on by something. In my case, probably snails or slugs. So I'm just going to keep these directionally the same as much as possible and just do a rough chop a couple of times down lengthwise. These, I'm not looking for, even pieces. I'm just looking for them to be pretty much bite size. Doesn't have to be precise. And then I'm going to bundle those up and I'm going to chop once this way. And I'll do that with both of them as well as with the kale. Water is on a simmer right now, so it should be coming up to a boil any minute now. Collard greens are really high in calcium, folate, vitamin K, C, and A. They're also high in fiber as well as antioxidants. In addition, they help improve your bone, your eye, your digestive, and your heart health. And this might look like a ton of greens, but when we're done, it's going to look like barely anything. This is a little bit deceiving. You'll see. Nice good boil going on, and so I am going to get these loaded in as much as I can. And I've got some ice water sitting over here that I will transfer it to after a few minutes. We're just about starting to come back up to a boil, so I'm going to go ahead and start a 3-minute timer. Blanching is a recommended step before you freeze or freeze dry so that you can kill the enzyme that keeps aging the food. As the food keeps aging, even after it's been, say, frozen or freeze dried, it's going to continue to degrade the nutrients, the flavor, and the texture, and the color. So in order to get longevity and nutrition out of food that you are putting in the freezer or the freeze dryer, you really should blanch it first. That's true for most things, most vegetables. Timer is just about to go off. There it is. So I'm going to get the heat turned off. I'm going to move the pot closer to my ice bath so I don't make a mess as I'm transferring the food. I want to get off as much of this hot water as I can because this hot water is just going to heat up that ice bath. So I want to let it drain as much as possible. I get my pot moved over to position 1 again. I'm going to get these rinsed in some cool water, and we're going to start on the kale. What I've done is I've taken the kale out of my larger pot. I emptied that out. There were no bugs in it, but there was some dirt in it. So the saltwater bath also cleans it, not just from passengers, but from, splashback from rain. I refilled that with cold water, and I took the greens out of the bowl and put them into the pot. They're completely cooled down now, and I'm just going to let them sit in cold water. I've got some towels set up behind me so that once these go into the pot and they're blanching for 3 minutes, I'll pull the greens out of the sink pot and lay them out here to get them just a little bit dried off. And then I'll just do that process over again where we cool these down in an ice bath, but then we also give them a good soak in some cold water. I have 2 different types of kale here. I've got the Scotch curled kale as well as the scarlet kale. I like all kinds of kale. I just love kale. I love cooked greens, and they're so nutritious for you. A lot of people will freeze dry these or dehydrate these and then powder them down. I have a lot of green powder powdered down, but it's not my go-to grab. I'd rather have the food. So we're gonna leave these intact after they are frozen and or freeze dried. So I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna start making my piles of strips and setting aside my stems. Definitely didn't get a lot of the scarlet kale. This has been the most bizarre growing season. I think we started out in spring in March at 90 degrees. This is now early September, and we started that at like 50 degrees. Just the strangest summer ever. We've had torrential downpours. It's just been an anomaly of a growing season. So anything that I can harvest, I am happy with. And Sky has a lot to say today. She's my husky mix. Molly just ran upstairs and Sky is wooing her back down. She wants to play. And Charlie, my little terrier boy, he has a hot spot on his leg that he won't leave alone. So he has a cone on his head and he can't do much playing at the moment. I'm trying to treat it with some yarrow tea. I had another family member visit from out of state and they were here for about a month, and during that stay they developed canker sores in their mouth, and that's something common for them, but even so extremely painful to the point where eating or talking is difficult. They use pharmacy meds, but it's always a situation where they just have to kind of bear through the pain for weeks on end. So I made a yarrow tea for them to use as a mouthwash, and after 3 applications, about an 18-hour period of time, the sores were completely gone. I kid you not. It was like magic. And they thought so too. So then they used the tea as a topical application for acne, and that was resolved within a day. And that was the first time I've ever had to use yarrow, and I am totally impressed. So I made a tea for my dog, not to drink, just to use with a wet cloth on the hot spot. And you know what? The redness is completely gone. But I think I still need to wait a bit before calling it healed, because when I remove his cone, he goes right back to chewing at the spot. It's a work in progress. But I'd love to know if you have ever used yarrow, and if so, for what application? Did you make a alcohol tincture or a salve? I'd love to know how you used it and what the result was. I cannot wait for next season to be able to harvest a whole bunch. It's a little late in the season here for a big batch, but I am going to pick what I can and get it preserved when I do my calendula. I am utterly impressed with what it did for my family member and, so far, for my dog. Now we're going to get to cutting. Again, just running my knife through it because I want more bite-sized pieces. Just makes it easier to cook with, eat. When I package all of this up, I'm going to package the collards separately from the kale, just so I know which is which. I really like kale in soups and ramens and things like that, and I really like the texture of the collards in the skillet fried meals that I make that I mentioned. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just a mental thing. I don't think it's a flavor thing, but I think it might be a texture thing. So I'm going to package these differently, and that's why I am blanching them separate. All right, we're boiling, so let's get these in. They're just going to start to melt down into that water. All right, once this comes back up to a boil, I'm going to give that 2 to 3 minutes, and then we're going to give it an ice bath, and we're going to move on to the bok choy, which we're going to do a little differently. We are at about the 3-minute mark here, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this off and start pulling it out. Again, trying to get rid of as much of that hot water as I can, or it'll melt my ice cubes. And I just kind of fluff it up a little bit to encourage it to spread apart so it can cool down in between all those leaves. All right, let's get this over to the sink and let's get this into a larger pot of water to cool down. Our ice cubes didn't fully melt, but that can be deceptive because this curly kale is still holding a lot of heat inside of the curls. So I'm going to give it a good dunk in this larger pot of cold water and make sure that we're totally cooled down. By mixing that around, I'm encouraging all of those leaves to open up, which is also going to help with the drying process. We don't need to get it fully dry, but we don't want it sopping wet either. this can sit here for a while we work on the bok choy. This bok choy I picked up today at a local Asian market. We have a pretty big Asian market. And I knew that this was not going to fill up for freeze dryer trays, so I'm going to get some bok choy done as well. I've just given this a quick wash. I'm not sure exactly what the variety is on this, but these are going to be delicious in whatever I want to use them in. I'm going to use my cast iron skillet because that is non-stick at this point, well seasoned from year after year use. And I don't want to put any oil on this because it's going into the freeze dryer. So I'm just quartering these down. I've not done this before. I've only ever just cooked with bok choy. So this is an experiment. I think it's a good one though. I think it's going to turn out just fine. Fingers crossed. I had to go to the Asian market anyway to get some of the red chili and red chili powders, red chili stuff for my hot oil. So when I saw these, I thought, yes, that's exactly what I need to finish off my freeze dryer trays for the greens. And this is delicious in the ramen bowls and other types of stir fries and soups, whatever I want to use them for. So they're just going to do a quick pass in the pan just to get them charred a little bit, cooked a little bit, again, to stop that enzyme from aging them, but I didn't want to blanch them. All right, so I'm just going to lay these down. I have the pan screaming hot. I'm going to turn it down to a medium to a medium low. Medium to a medium low. I'm just going to use some tongs to get them in and out of the pan because it's screaming hot in here. But all I can fit in there for now. We'll flip them in just a minute. Got some really good color on there, so I'm going to flip those to the other side. These look great. I'm going to do one turn on the back. Can you imagine these in a hot bowl of noodle soup with a hot chili oil running through it? Oh, that sounds so amazing. And then I've placed just a cooling rack over here, and from the pan, I'm going to put them on here, and then I can move these onto a freeze dryer tray when the next batch is ready. Looks like some of the tender leaves are getting a little charred down here. I'll probably snip those off after they come out of the freeze dryer, depending on how they taste. Take too long. I did that maybe, between 1 to 2 minutes per side, assuming 3 sides, 2 cut sides and the back, because these are quartered down. I only wanted to use 2 freeze dryer trays for this, so I'm kind of smushing them together. I have never freeze dried bok choy, so this is an experiment, but I think it's going to turn out great. Even if some of the delicate, longer leaves don't make it through all that well, the core area should be just fine. I think this is going to be fantastic. The reason I put them on a wire cooling rack is to make sure that the air could circulate through them to get them cooled down just a little bit faster. Once these are totally cooled, I will get them into the freezer. And now we're gonna move on to the peppers because I need to get my cayenne condiment shaker filled. Making your own spices is really quite simple. I use either freeze-dried or dehydrated, in this case, peppers. And then I just use my Vitamix. Before I had the Vitamix, I have a separate coffee grinder that I dedicated to spices. The problem with that is it takes long because you can't put too many of them in at one time. But this is almost empty. There is just a fractional amount on the bottom here. I use cayenne a lot. I have mentioned before, let me just get some of these in here. I have mentioned that I really like spice. I'm more of a spice person than a sweet person. This was one of my long cayennes from last year. And about a year ago, I was talking to somebody about coffee. I think they asked me if I wanted some like flavored creamer in my coffee. And I said, no, I don't, I'm not a sweets person. And it got me to thinking that I do enjoy something in my coffee, but I typically drink it black. And I thought, well, what if I didn't? What if I put stuff in there that I actually like? So every morning I brew coffee and then I put in there about 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne, 1/8 of a teaspoon of turmeric, and just a little smidge of black pepper to allow my body to actually use the good stuff that is in turmeric. And so this goes pretty quick. So I tend to grow a lot of cayenne peppers, and I dehydrate them and then just blend them down. I do like spices done in the dehydrator versus the freeze dryer because the freeze dryer turns into more of a like baby powder versus a normal spice. And I feel as though because I just keep it in these jars that are not airtight, the freeze-dried powder tends to get a little bit clumpy versus the dehydrated powder does not. So I like it dehydrated and then blended down, and this is going to be quick and simple. I'm just going to turn it on, get it to high, and let it go for a few seconds. That's it. Let's see if that's enough. I don't want to use all of these. I do have one more jar of these, but that'll get you when you first open it. Be careful. I want to use some of these in the hot chili oil that I'm going to make too. But I also would like to get this filled up. So that got us about halfway. So I'm going to do almost all of these, just not quite. We'll save a few for the hot chili oil. And the nice thing about using the Vitamix to do this is it pulverizes the seeds as well. I never learn. Whew, spicy. Perfect. A full jar of cayenne. That should last me probably a good at least 8 months. And like I said, I do have another jar of this in my pantry. I am going to have to grow more peppers though next year. I didn't grow a lot of peppers this year because 2 years ago I had such a bumper crop. I have so many peppers stored, but next year we're going to have to focus back on peppers. All right, now what I'm going to do is just dust out this container here because I'm going to use it again now for the eggshells. I don't care if I get pepper in my eggshells necessarily, but I certainly didn't want eggshells in my pepper. So I keep all of my used eggshells. I just put them in the sink after I crack the egg. I wash them out, I get them dry, and then I put them into a mason jar. And as the jar fills up with eggshells, I just squish them down further and further into the jar until the jar is absolutely full. And then I'll start a new mason jar, and eventually I will do this process. It only takes a few seconds. It does create a very fine particle mist that you don't want to breathe in. So I'm definitely holding my breath a lot while I am doing this, but it is an excellent way to get free garden amendments. Calcium is a really good treatment for preventing blossom end rot on things like eggplant, tomatoes. I'll even throw it in with my pepper plants. It just helps build your soil overall, and it's a free way to do it. For the hot chili oil that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to start with just my vegetable prep. So I've got a thumb-sized piece of ginger here. It's a little bit bigger than that. That's okay. I love ginger, and I am just going to get this diced up. So I am going to do long slices for plank. And once they're planked, I can take them and put them into thin matchstick slices. This doesn't have to be precise. And then dice them down. For the garlic, I am just slicing them into just very thin slices, and I'm using 4 large cloves because we really like garlic. I'm also going to be dicing up about half of a medium onion here. Just want them, you can use slices if you want. I'm dicing it, and all of this is going to get fried in some hot oil until they each get crispy. They're going to be fried individually because they have a different fry point and temperature need. So we're going to start with the onions in the oil. Before we get started with the oil, I want to make sure all my other ingredients are ready. So here I am just pouring the rest of the cayenne into the food processor along with a few of the ghost peppers that we have and blending them down into very small bits. Next, I've got some dry spices that we're going to be using. I've got 2 cinnamon sticks because they're rather small. I've got 2 star anise pods in here. And then I've got, I don't know, probably the equivalent of a teaspoon of whole cloves. We're going to get these toasted on the stove next. I've got my pan turned on to about a medium flame, and I'm just going to toss these spices in here, and they're only going to take a couple of minutes over this heat. We just want to kind of wake them up, get them a little toasty. All right, that should be good on those. I'm just going to pour them back into the bowl here and let them hang out for a minute. Next, I've got to get some oil going on this burner here. We're going to use about 2 cups of avocado oil because that's a really neutral tasting oil. There's 1 cup, 2 cups. I'm going to get that turned on so that I can heat this up to about 350 degrees. I think there might have been a little water in my pan because it is a crackling over here. I just checked the temp though with the thermometer. We're at about 250 degrees, and I want to come up to actually about 325 degrees for the onions. And then we're going to do the garlic and ginger separately, but at about 300 degrees. I've gone ahead and I've put the pepper flakes that I minced down into a mason jar, and to that I am going to add some toasted sesame seeds. As many as I want, probably about 1/4 cup. The recipe that I was kind of pulling together also called for white pepper. I do have some, but I can't open the jar. I've tried and tried, I can't open the jar, so I'm just not going to put it in. It also calls for some Asian red chili pepper. So I am going to add some of that as well. And that's going to help make this oil like a red. So that's going to look amazing. And I'm going to put a bunch in. This is not bringing so much heat as it, because there's no seeds in here, as it is more of that smoky flavor and just a depth of flavor. So I think we're good about there. I'm going to put in a little bit of salt, a couple good pinches. I'm also going to add some of this gochujang red sauce. This is a spicy red sauce that we like. I'm just going to add a little bit of that. And most of the recipes that I looked up were published by Asian content creators, and they all called for MSG. I'm not going to add the MSG. Instead, I am going to add some of this dried seaweed. This is kombu seaweed, which from what I understand is what MSG was produced to replicate. So these are very sea salty, big flakes of seaweed, and they should impart similar flavor that the MSG would impart. And I'm just using a little bit of that. I am going to go ahead and also throw in those toasted spices. And now we're going to get to frying. Let me give this a good shake first. Get everything mixed well in there. All right, let me temp my oil. I'm going to go ahead and get these onions in. I have a feeling that because onions have moisture on them, they're going to splatter, so I'm going to try to be careful. And we just want to cook those until they start to get a little bit golden. I had to turn that off for a minute and just let that oil calm back down. It was just about to boil over, but we're good. That was a lot of onions for that amount of oil, although I did use a deeper pot on purpose. We still lost some of the oil. So before I do the garlic or the ginger, I'm going to add just a little bit more oil back in. We want to fry them until they're just starting to get a nice deep golden brown color on them. And I decided I wanted to get some cardamom seeds in that oil as well, so I'm toasting those up now. That should be good on those. We'll let those cool down, and let's check our onions. All right, we're just starting to get a hint of color, so just another minute or two, I think. I've got a plate here to put those crispy onions on just to drain a little bit when they come out. And to this, I'm going to add those cardamom seeds. And I'm also going to add a little bit of this Asian chili powder. It's one of the things I bought at the Asian food store, which is where I bought the Bok Choy. Just a little bit of this. Actually, I want to taste this. See if it's different than the chili powder I already had in the cupboard. It's a little different. It's definitely more smoky than heat, but it's good. So I'm going to add a little bit of that. Whew, okay, actually, that is a little heat just at the back of your throat. It's good. All right, our onions are just starting to crisp up. They're almost done. I would say in all, the onions are taking about 5 minutes total. Oh, this is going to be so good. I cannot wait to have this. And I'm going to make sure I have my oil ready to add just a little bit more oil back to that pan before I put in the garlic and then the ginger. And actually, that's going to help cool the oil down a little bit too, because we wanted it about 300 degrees for both of these. It's looking good, it's smelling delicious. I'm really excited about this. We will use this for so many things. My son is a super big chicken wing fan. I like them too, but he loves chicken wings. And he actually uses ghost pepper sauce, like a hot sauce. I made hot sauce using the ghost peppers. He's the only one that will try it. But I think that he will really like this as well, as just a drizzle. Because a little bit of this is going to go a long way. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat off. I'm gonna start fishing these out because these are nice and toasty. All right, I'm gonna add a little bit more oil to the pan. I'm gonna temp it. We're slowly climbing up from 282, 283, 284, 285. So I'm just gonna give that about as much time as it takes me to get the next ingredient in. This is the ginger, and the ginger is gonna cook quick, just a few seconds. You can see the nice color on those onions though. Oh, they look tasty. Now this cooking the onions in the oil did help flavor the oil. Same with the ginger that we're doing, same with the garlic that we're gonna do. And so you can totally just discard this when you're done, but I'm actually gonna put it back in the jar. I have another glass like oil container that I will pour some of the just the oil off of after it's been marinating for a couple of days. But we'll keep all of the, the spices and the bits in here to spoon out and use in recipes and things. Now, I won't take all the oil out, but all right, next I'm going to go in with the sliced garlic carefully. That's going to cook up quick as well. I went ahead and put a funnel on my jar because the hot oil is going to get poured in there right with this garlic. Once the garlic is done, so I can go ahead and pour these in now as well. This is looking really good. It's just starting to get a golden color on it. It's not burning yet, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat off so that it doesn't, and we are just going to get it poured into this jar. All right, you can see here we've got some nice toasty looking garlic, and that's going to go right in. I'm going to use a chopstick to move the spices out of the way so the oil can really penetrate down to the bottom. There we go. Ooh, that's hot. Smells amazing. I'm going to go in with the rest of it. Look at that sizzle. Can you see that sizzle in there? I know the lighting's probably pretty bad at this point. It's getting kind of late in the day. Oh, this looks fantastic. I have 2 freeze dryer trays filled with beautiful bok choy. Again, this is an experiment. I cannot wait to try it. It smells amazing, and I think that this is going to be a beautiful additive to whatever I want to do with this winter, which I already know it's going to be a ramen bowl, but I might find other uses for that as well. Over here, I have my kale. So this is a really full freeze dryer tray filled with kale. That was a lot of kale, but we got it all on there. And this is my tray of collard greens. I didn't get all the collard greens on here, so I just portioned them out to 2-cup servings and put them in these Ziploc bags. And I'm going to put this into a freezer, larger Ziploc bag, and that way I'll have some I can just pull out of the freezer that is, that I don't have to rehydrate. And then again, we have this amazing jar of hot chili oil. I cannot wait to give this a try. Thank you so much for joining me for another Sunday fun day, kind of a hodgepodge in my kitchen. We got our greens processed for storage, for preservation. We got the hot chili oil done as well. So that is going to do it for me. I appreciate you. If you're still here at the end, I appreciate you sticking with me. If you learned anything or were inspired, please consider giving me a like, maybe a subscribe, maybe a comment. I decided to save the sign off for the next day, which is today, because I wanted to give you a taste test of this chili sauce. I thought I would be the first one to taste this, but when I woke up, it's clearly already been used by quite a bit. So I think it's a hit, and I'm probably going to be making a lot more of this, but let's give it a taste. I wanted to wait until the next day to really give time for the spices in here to marinate in the oil. I'm excited. Just a little taste. Oh man, that is delicious. There is a lot of heat. It's not too bad. It's going to keep getting hotter and hotter as everything kind of settles in, especially with those extra spicy hot peppers that I put in here. This is amazing. I am definitely going to be making more of that, and this is definitely going to be a good additive to my hot tomato dipping oil as well as my ramen soups. But I thought this would last me a good 6 months. This is probably not even going to last me 2 weeks. So I'm going to be making more of that for sure. If you like hot things, I recommend giving this a try. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Kelly. You're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I do hope you come back and visit again soon.